I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
What can be unburdened by what has been? What can be unburdened by what has been?
What can be unburdened by what has been?
What can be unburdened by what has been?
Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we're going to talk about Vice President Kamala Harris slowly but surely destroying her campaign as predicted on this channel, because obviously her support was always fake. This joy and vibes thing that went on for 6 weeks after she stole the Democratic nomination from Joe Biden was never real. It was always going to fall apart. And as we've seen more of Kamala Harris, as people remember why they despised her so much as vice president, her campaign has started to fall apart. And it's actually been falling apart steadily, slowly, but surely ever since the presidential debate, which, by the way, I told you at the time that Kamala Harris did not achieve her viral moment for all the talk about Trump's performance. What people didn't realize was she needed that more than him. And we've seen in the polls, even though people say she won the debate because of what went down in the debate, there's nothing memorable for her to take away from that performance. So she's been trying to do media interviews, she's been trying to get out there, and they've all been objectively failures. Now we're going to get into this. I'm going to break this down, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So Vice President Kamala Harris decided that she was going to do her first live interview on The View with a bunch of friendly people hosting her, trying to pump her up, trying to cheer her up, throwing her softballs. But for whatever reason, this woman refuses to swing the bat, refuses to make even minimal contact with those softballs, and she fails in every possible way. Now, everybody is highlighting one clip in particular, and we will get to it. But I first want to talk about this question related to her stealing the nomination from Joe Biden, because I think it's absolutely hilarious.
You get this phone call, and I guess you can tell who's calling, and what does he say?
So I'll set the scene for you.
Okay.
So it was a Sunday, and our family, my niece, her husband, and their 2 daughters were staying with us. And I had promised them that Sunday Auntie was going to make pancakes and bacon, and we were going to have a really... And, you know, the kids wake up, the girls, they're 6 and 8, they were at the time, they wake up early. We always wake up the first.
Right.
So they come knocking on the door, and then we have our quiet time in the morning, just me and the girls. Right. And so I went to work out, and I had on cooking shows, and they were asking me, Auntie, what's that ingredient? What's that ingredient? And they're playing while I'm working out.
So right off the top, they asked the question. And for those of you who are unaware of what has been reported going on behind the scenes, apparently people in the Obama team, people in the Clinton team, those staffers that ling around in the Democratic Party, forced Joe Biden off the ballot, according to certain reporting, under the threat of the 25th Amendment. And Kamala Harris was an active participant in forcing Joe Biden off the ballot. So right away, right off the top, everything that she's telling you is an absolute lie. But let us also take note of the fact that she is describing her nieces, calling her auntie, which is kind of like a black way of referring to your aunt, because Kamala Harris is also trying to pander to black people. On top of that, the breakfast that she describes, pancakes and bacon. First of all, you notice that Kamala Harris is almost always talking about cooking and how she's such a good cook and all that, because she believes that makes her relatable. The most notorious version of this was the collard greens incident.
That was me in my suit and heels walking through Charleston International Airport carrying 2 big plastic bags full of fresh South Carolina collard greens. It's a true story. And yes, as I walked on the plane, there were a few people who gave me the look and the nod.
But let's be clear about something. The reason why Kamala Harris, a San Francisco liberal who knows more vegans, more vegetarians than she does meat eaters, let's keep it real, is referencing bacon over and over and over again, is not because she absolutely loves bacon. It's because independent voters and Americans in general like bacon, so she's pandering to you in this regard. And it's like, oh, my little baby nieces, they were like, can I have more bacon, dearest auntie, greatest auntie in the world? child who would make a wonderful president. And then all of a sudden, Joseph R. Biden ends up giving her a call.
Make breakfast. We sit down. We're having breakfast. And we'd been working on a puzzle. So they wanted more bacon, got more bacon. And then, you know how it goes. Yeah. And so then we had a puzzle. So we went back up to work on the puzzle. I'm still in my workout clothes.
Right.
And we're working on the puzzle. And the phone rings.
Right.
So I said, Auntie, you'll be right back. And it was the president.
Sorry, I forgot about the portion of the story where they were working on a puzzle and then the little babies were like, can I have more bacon? And she gave more bacon. You know how it goes. This is very relatable, as Kamala Harris has once told people after she told the story where she expected them to relate to it. And, you know, it really definitely 100% works when you tell the person who is receiving the information exactly how to feel. So yeah, she was making bacon in her workout clothes and she got up early in the morning because her beautiful baby nieces wanted some bacon from her, and Kamala Harris loves bacon, and let us not talk about bacon so much, but she definitely loves bacon, also collard greens and whatnot. But then all of a sudden, Mr. Joe Biden, while they were doing this puzzle with bacon fingers, he ended up calling.
And he told me his decision. And I'll tell you, the first thing I asked him is, are you sure? Because what a big decision.
Yeah.
And historic.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked for a while. Meanwhile, I went back into the room where the girls were, and I'm like, go get your father. Because I knew he'd be up somewhere. And so we laughed afterwards. Nick is their father. We laughed that Amara, the elder one, was kind of like Paul Revere, and Leela, the younger one, was Paul Revere's horse. But, you know, so there were these, it was a real split screen, obviously. And then the rest of the day was, I mean, it was surreal. I'll tell you honestly, one of the first people I called was my pastor. I mean, I needed to talk to God, you know, and to pray.
Yeah.
It was, I understood in real time what was happening, and obviously then it really set in the hours and days to come.
So yeah, this is the version of the coup that she's been telling to the public, and honestly, one of the number one reasons why I'm rooting for Kamala Harris to lose is so that the Biden people can come out with the knives and tell us how this actually went down. Tell us that Kamala Harris played an integral role in removing Joe Biden from the ticket. And by the way, I just want to also point out that 60 Minutes actually did a decent job pressing her on this.
Was democracy best served by President Biden stepping down and basically handing you a nomination? You didn't have to go through a primary process. You didn't have to fight off other contenders. That's not really the way our system was intended to work.
President Biden made a decision that I think history is going to show is rare among leaders, which was to put country before self. And I am proud to have earned the support of the vast majority of delegates and to have been elected the Democratic nominee. I am proud to have received the endorsement of leaders around this country from every background and walk of life to fight in this election over the next month for our democracy.
But I think this truncated process is why people think or say they don't really know who you are.
Look, I've been in this race for 70 days.
And how undemocratic her stealing the nomination actually was, and Kamala Harris, up against somebody who's actually giving her pushback, had no answer for this. Again, as per usual.
As vice president, you've worked very closely with President Biden for almost 4 years. He was here on our show, and he said there wasn't a single thing that he did that you could not do. What do you think would be the biggest specific difference between your presidency and a Biden presidency?
So Kamala Harris ends up getting asked a very simple question. This is what ultimately ends up leading to the viral clip, which is, what are the differences between your presidency and the Biden presidency? What will you do different from Joe Biden, who is so unpopular, you were able to force him off the ticket? And Kamala Harris, who doesn't know why she's running for president other than the fact that she wants power, she doesn't really have a policy agenda, she hasn't been fed that agenda yet, decides that she's going to answer like this. this. And you know it's bad when she delivers an answer and Sunny Hostin is unsatisfied with it.
Well, we're obviously two different people, and we have a lot of shared life experiences. For example, the way we feel about our family and our parents and so on. But we're also different people, and I will bring those sensibilities to how I lead. For example, I know we're going to talk today, but one of the issues that I'm very focused on is what we do around home health care.
Yes.
I have done a lot of work as it relates to, sadly, but violence against women and children. I care a lot about that. I love our small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me predominantly, but we had what we called a second mother who lived 2 houses down who helped my mother raise us. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. And so the influence of a personal experience will have its impact on a presidency.
So Kamala, of course, starts rambling into all her different policy things and whatnot. She says her and Joe Biden have such shared experiences. And then she talks about her neighbor, who was like her second mother, that was a small business owner. And Kamala Harris loves her small business. It's kind of amazing that you could essentially send in a tape recorder with different questions and time codes, and somebody could press play whenever they ask Kamala a question in a vague category, and she will spit out the exact same answers. Kamala, I got news for you. Nobody gives a damn about your neighbor that was a small business owner that was your second mother. We don't care at all whatsoever. We want to know what you're going to do when you become president, but the problem that you have is that you're claiming responsibility for all of Biden's so-called achievements. As vice president, you actually didn't do anything except hide from the media most of the time, and the one thing that you did do was actually cast tie-breaking votes in favor of Joe Biden's very unpopular agenda. So she has no record that she can actually be proud of. She has nothing to run on, so she ends up dodging these questions in the absolute worst way. On top of that, Joe Biden very much did not want to give up the nomination to Kamala Harris. So she starts attacking him. The Biden people will start attacking her.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden?
So after Kamala's rambling answer that you just heard right there that I talked about, you end up seeing Sunny Hostin, of all people, throw out a follow-up question. And you know you're doing absolutely terrible when Sunny Hostin follows up with you as Kamala Harris. And Kamala manages to see this softball swing and a miss just like the one before it.
During the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact. The work that we have done, for example, capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month for our seniors is something I care deeply about allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices and bring the cost of prescription medication down for seniors, but my intention is to expand that for all Americans. The work we have done to invest in American industries, whether it be in terms of manufacturing and creating almost 800,000 new jobs around manufacturing. Those were all a shared priority.
So right there, that's the answer that's going to be in all these different various Trump ads where she says nothing comes to mind that she would do different, and we have all these shared policies and shared goals, which just goes to show you that this fraudulent I'm the change candidate campaign doesn't make any sense at all. It's not logical to assume that because she's been there the whole time. We've seen what she does as vice president, and she just goes along to get along with Joseph R. Biden. Now again, I will point out that the Biden team is not fans of Kamala Harris. They absolutely can't stand her. They never wanted to pick her. And then she turned around and stole the nomination from President Biden. So obviously, if she was going to go out of her way to attack Joe Biden, that would be a problem for her. On top of that, if she says she's in favor of all these different various things, that ultimately leads up to the follow-up question, which is, why haven't you pushed for that? Why have you never talked about that as vice president?
Well, let's Kamala, and I'm calling you Kamala because for all of those who are mispronouncing it, I want you all to know how to say it. But let's talk about something.
So if you had any illusions that The View wasn't a bunch of dumb hosts that just pander to the left constantly, that should disabuse you of that notion right there. Because she just said, oh, I'm going to pronounce your name Kamala because all these people are pronouncing it wrong. They need to get it right. And then that results in an ovation from the crowd. I will point out time and time again that almost everyone on the Democratic side, and they were the people most likely to talk about Harris, called her Kamala before this. It has never never been an issue. All of a sudden, it is an issue. And what's crazy about this is that a bunch of these different people, like Michael Eric Dyson in videos that we talked about before, say it's anti-black to mispronounce her name when her name is of Indian origin. So keep emphasizing that while you're also trying to say that she's the blackest woman to ever blacken the United States of America.
The environment is vital. Killmonger may have ruined and burned your field of heart-shaped herbs, but don't worry. I'm from California. I can repopulate that field with a bunch of different herbs. To the lovely people of Wakanda, I know you will make the right choice. And as always, Wakanda forever. Paid for by Kamala Harris.
So I love the fact that this ended up getting brought up in the particular View segment right here.
You and Governor DeSantis have been going back and forth, trading jabs over your attempt to check in. And ahead of the storm, you've called him selfish for not taking your calls. Now, he said this morning you've never called regarding any of the storms Florida has had since you've been vice president until apparently now, and called it political. What's your response to that?
Because Ron DeSantis has handled this absolutely excellently, and it just goes to show you how politically motivated each and every action Kamala Harris is taking, which, by the way, is not surprising because she is the vice president of the United States of America and currently running for president. This is an inherently political time. That being said, she made the grave error of going up against Ron DeSantis, of saying that she was trying to call him to help him out, but Ron DeSantis, in a partisan way, refused to take her call. But Ron DeSantis says, look, I didn't even know she called. I've been talking to the Biden administration. I've been talking to FEMA. And just for the record, in the entire 3 years that they've been in office, I've been hit with multiple storms, and I've never received a call from Kamala Harris. So it is very political for her now to all of a sudden try to get involved when she was completely absent from this for years.
Well, first of all, I have called and talked with, in the course of this crisis, this most recent crisis, Democrat and Republican governors. Called, taken the call, answered the call, had a conversation. So obviously, this is not an issue that is about partisanship or politics for certain leaders, but maybe is for others.
So first of all, I just want to point out for everybody out there in the audience that Vice President Kamala Harris completely dodged the question right there. I know some of you might think she answered it, but if you pay attention to that answer, what she actually said was, listen, in this current crisis, I have called Democrat and Republican governors, they've taken the call. She starts to ramble a little bit. So it's a shame that Ronnie DeSantis is saying that I never called before, even though in my answer, I'm saying I only started calling governors now at this moment in time. So what she's actually doing right here is confirming what Ron DeSantis said. And I'm going to play you that clip in a little bit, but let's see Kamala Harris bury herself.
We have to have an agreement that at some point, we all need to work together to combine resources, especially federal, state, and local resources around these kinds of disasters. Yeah. And I think it's a shame that that hasn't happened, but look, it has at the local level and with, other state elected. So
he'll take your call when you're president.
Yeah.
So, of course, that rambling, nonsensical answer ends with another applause line from Ana Navarro saying that he'll take your call when you're president. And hopefully, Kamala Harris, when she's president, would actually call the states that are impacted by these storms and actually work on a response. But Ron DeSantis addressed this absolutely perfectly on Fox News. He talked about how he worked well with the Trump administration and with the Biden administration and with FEMA. And it's actually been proven out by his record, by his time in office, that he hasn't taken the time to go after the Biden administration in particular when any of the other various storms hit the state of Florida. He's praised them constantly, so it comes off as more honest when he points out that Kamala Harris has never called him before this. Not to mention, Kamala Harris basically admitted it by not answering the question directly, that she never calls these people when the storms hit their place because she doesn't care that much. And she said for certain leaders it's political, for certain leaders it isn't, and Kamala Harris is in the category of leaders that it is political for.
And we've been laser focused on leveraging all resources available, including from the federal government. And I've been in touch with both FEMA and the president, as well as marshaling all our state agencies and working to support our local communities. And so for Kamala Harris to try to say that my sole focus on the people of Florida is somehow selfish is delusional. She has no role in this. In fact, she's been vice president for 3.5 years. I've dealt with a number of storms under this administration. She has never contributed anything to any of these efforts. And so what I think is selfish is her trying to blunder into this. No. And here's the thing. She has no role. No, she has no role in this process. I'm in contact with the President of the United States. I'm in contact with FEMA director. I'm obviously managing all our state agencies. We're supporting all our local government. And I will say this. I've had storms under both President Trump and President Biden, and I've worked well with both of them. She's the first one who's trying to politicize the storm, and she's doing that just because of her campaign. She's trying to get some type of an edge. She knows she's doing poorly, and so she's playing these political games. I don't have time for political games. I've got people whose lives are on the line. I've got people whose homes and their possessions are on the line, and we are focused 100% on that mission. I'm not worried about playing her political games. And so she is being selfish by trying to blunder into this when we're working just fine.
So needless to say, Ron DeSantis absolutely demolished Kamala Harris, and this is one of the main problems that the Democrats have when they're going up against Ron DeSantis, is that the one thing that he's definitely good at, he's not the most charismatic guy, obviously not the best at running a presidential campaign, is governing, and governing for his state and preparing for his emergencies like this, because if you can't prepare for this, you can't win a second term with those overwhelming majorities that DeSantis actually won with. And remember, we talked about a bridge that actually collapsed in the Florida Keys, and Ron DeSantis ended up getting that bridge rebuilt in 48 hours. That is not something that happens in the United States of America anymore, where we build things incredibly quickly, but Ron DeSantis, being an efficient governor, was able to do so. But in addition to this, DeSantis apparently invited Kamala Harris to come on this live conference call to talk about Florida, and that turned out to be a disaster as well, because Kamala Harris actually was getting fed questions by her staff live on air.
Flood, we really got to watch those areas and those communities. So it takes quite a while for that water to drain.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Ken, I have a question for you. You mentioned words matter, and I know there's a lot of media following this briefing.
Yeah, that's right. You can hear her saying it's a live broadcast. It's a live broadcast to her staff.
Those areas and those communities. So
before then trying to attempt a follow-up question. What an absolute embarrassment, considering that she was making the case that she cares so hard that she doesn't even have the questions at the ready for the emergency people, because it's all the show for her. And her staff thought they could just feed her the answers like they always do and hope that that would get her by. But just like when her teleprompter failed, she can't do it without them. She can't hang. Now, the next thing that Kamala Harris decided that she was going to propose on The View was that Medicare was going to pay for in-home health care for seniors, and that they were going to use the money that they save for negotiating with prescription drug companies in Medicare in order to pay for it. But the fact of the matter is, they're actually only negotiating the price on one drug. That's it. Maybe the program will expand further, but by the time they work out the negotiations for the other 9 drugs that they're negotiating, the patents will expire and there will already be cheaper generic versions of those drugs out there. But what I find funny about this is that Kamala Harris said twice that the concerns of elderly people are eating the food that they like and wearing the right clothing or sweater.
So, Sonny, like you, I took care of my mother when she was sick. She was diagnosed with cancer. Mm-hmm. And so it is a personal experience for me, as well as something I care deeply about. Taking care of a parent, that means trying to cook what they want to eat, right. What they can eat. It means picking out clothes for them that that's soft enough that it doesn't irritate their skin, right? It means trying to think of something funny to make them laugh or smile. Yeah. And there's so much about that really is about giving folks dignity, mm-hmm. These kinds of things where it's just about helping an aging parent or person, prepare a meal, put their sweater on. Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's about dignity for that individual. It's about independence for that individual. Yes. I mean, people are of declining skills to some extent, but their their pride has not declined.
Look, if Kamala was killing these interviews, if she was knocking it out of the park, if she impressed me, I would tell you that she's actually a better candidate than she previously was back in 2020. But the fact of the matter is, she's significantly worse. She has this idea in her brain, and maybe this is from the Obama people, that you have to paint an image in people's mind, but she sucks at it. she's painting with her offhand. It's absolutely terrible. So all you get is these cheesy, like, oh, I'm trying to relate to you thing, which only shows us how disconnected she actually is. And by the way, Kamala Harris's failures are reflected in the polling. It's not just the most accurate polls that are wrongly labeled right-leaning polls. It's the ones that the media calls the most accurate that actually overestimated Joe Biden's support by as much as 6 points in the swing states that are showing Trump gaining ground or outright in the lead. Now, of course, that doesn't matter if people don't get out and vote on election day, specifically if they're in these swing states. You should do early voting if it's available to you, because the fact of the matter is anything can change. October surprise, all of that. And what you need to do is get out and vote if you actually want the outcome of Kamala Harris losing. And if you want Kamala Harris winning, then don't vote, because that will work just as well. I'm just kidding, people. It's comedy. If you want your candidate to win, you go out to vote, no matter who the candidate is. But if you're an evil orange man supporter and you know some evil orange man supporters, make sure you get them out to the polls for early voting, specifically if you're in the swing states, if you want the evil orange man to win. But of course, as always, these are just my opinions about how these media appearances went. This is just my analysis, but I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Kamala Harris bombing at these interviews. Till next time.